I am Devin Shepard, Partner Marketing Manager with MRI Software, and I'm happy to introduce our partner, Global Software. They are part of MRI's Partner Connect program, supporting our open and connected ecosystem. And today they'll be joined by Midwest Property Management as they describe how MRI and Global Software helps them save time and efficiency through automating their financial reporting process. And with that, I would like to hand the webinar over to Connor Stratt with Global Software. Connor, you have our attention.
All right, appreciate it, Devin. As Devin just introduced me, my name is Connor Stratt. I'm an Excel automation advisor at Global Software. So I help our clients get up and running with Spreadsheet Server and help answer any questions that they have during their evaluations of our software. So after the webinar, if you have any interest in pursuing Spreadsheet Server as a solution for you, I'll make sure that my contact information is available at the end of the webinar. And I'm also joined by two fantastic other folks. One's a colleague of mine, Kevin Gibson. He's our senior consultant on our Solutions Enablement Group. And Kevin's a Spreadsheet Server expert. He actually was a user of Spreadsheet Server prior to coming to join our team at Global Software. And with those two combined instances, he's used Global Software for almost 10 years now. And Kevin will be doing a demo for us shortly towards the latter half of the webinar. We're also joined by Jocelyn Leroux from Midwest Property, and I've had the pleasure of working with Jocelyn for I guess about a year now. She's a heavy user of Spreadsheet Server. She loves the software. She's going to tell us a little bit more about her experiences and some increased efficiencies that she's seen in using Spreadsheet Server today. So hopefully some very valuable information there. And Jocelyn actually, she asked me one time if she could marry Spreadsheet Server. So I'm not sure exactly how legal that is, but I think it shows to how much she loves the software, and we're definitely looking forward to hearing what she has to say about it. And a little bit of a quick agenda. So now that we've done introductions, I'll tell you a little bit more about Global Software, high level what Spreadsheet Server does, a little bit more about our company. We'll hand it over to Jocelyn to tell us about her experiences, and then we'll hand it over to Kevin so he can actually do a live demo of Spreadsheet Server as well. And during any point in this presentation, if you have any questions, there's a little Q&A box up in the tight right-hand corner of your screen. Feel free to throw questions in there. We'll answer them as we go. And we've also saved some time towards the end of the webinar to answer questions as well. So, moving forward, about Global Software, company was founded over 40 years ago, a very well-established company based out of Raleigh, North Carolina. Spreadsheet Server, the product, has been around for over 20 years, so also a very well-established product. I mentioned headquarters are in Raleigh, North Carolina, but we also have offices in Seattle, New York, London, and Australia, as well as remote employees all over the country. So ultimately why this is important for our clients is that moving forward with Spreadsheet Server, you have our 24/7, 365 support. If you want to reach out to us phone, email, live chat, whatever is most preferred for you, there will be someone here to help you out. We are the #1 provider of Microsoft Excel-based automation solutions for the worldwide marketplace. We are Microsoft partners, and we, as Devin mentioned, we are our MRI partners and part of their Connect program. We have over 5,000 supported customers all around the world, and that includes over 75,000 daily users of Spreadsheet Server as well. So we've mentioned Spreadsheet Server a couple times in the webinar so far. I haven't really told you exactly what it does yet. So what Spreadsheet Server is, it's simply an Excel add-in that makes a live connection to your instance of MRI. So we provide live reporting from directly within Excel and give you drill down back to the transactional level detail from within MRI. So the idea here is that once we build out the reports moving forward, there's not going to have to be any more manual reentry of data or exporting to Excel. You'll be in your comfort zone with live reporting. Another piece of the product that we're going to talk about is Distribution Manager that comes with Spreadsheet Server. It's another piece of the ribbon, and this aims to automate report distribution from directly within Excel as well. So with this piece of the product, you'll build out a distribution list one time, says who needs what reports, when they want them, how they want to receive them, and moving forward, that is automated and sent out on a time schedule basis. I mentioned 75,000 customers, and a few of them are on your screen right now. You'll get to hear from Midwest Property today, but I did want to also highlight IRET and United Distributors. And reason being is that we recently surveyed all of our clients to quantify the time savings that they see utilizing Spreadsheet Server. And the most common answer was 300 hours or greater than 300 hours a year. And I think that's an extremely powerful statistic, because if you take into account a 40-hour work week, that's 7.5 weeks of time saving. So it's always a statistic that I love to share. And at this point, I think we're going to get on to some of the good stuff and hand it over to Jocelyn to talk about her experiences with Spreadsheet Server and some of the success stories that they've had. So you can go ahead and take it away, Jocelyn.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the webinar. As Connor said, Spreadsheet Server is the best thing that has ever happened to me, and I would love to marry it. So my function here at Midwest Property Management is as the analyst, which probably means I love the spreadsheet software a little more than most people would, because my entire life here at the office is creating reports. So if we can go to the next slide. So this is a little bit like a high-level look at our org structure. We take care of 37 residential properties, 19 commercial properties, 3 hotels. They all have separate operations reporting, corporate reporting, and we have 5 separate ownership groups. And as anybody knows, everybody wants to see something very specific and in their own way, and some people think that certain numbers are more important than other people think. Some people like graphs, some people like pivot tables. And so putting together the information for everybody exactly how they want to see it is more than a full-time job. And we bought Spreadsheet Server in July of 2017. If you guys want to go to the next slide. So far I've used all of the really basic functionality, which was super easy to learn, a lot of cash reporting, a lot of accounting reporting. This is one of the reports that I had to create in 2017 for the budget. This goes through a 6-year history of all of our capital reporting. There's something like 37 or 38 general ledger codes for all of our cyclical stuff, which is capital. And this particular report that you can see on the screen right now had to be recreated 65 times. So it had to be done for every single property, both commercial and residential. It had to be done consolidated based on property managers, and then it had to be done consolidated based on ownership groups and various levels of things that people wanted to see. Something like this would typically, even with MRI, take me a couple weeks to do. This set of reports took me 3 hours to create the main report, and then the rest of one day to get all 65 reports out and ready to go for budgets this year. Can you guys go to the next slide? One of the other things that Spreadsheet Server offers, which is really amazing, and it's my goal for 2018 to get better at it, is SQL queries. So not only can you use the base accounting functionality, there is a SQL reporting tool that allows Platinum users to go in and create queries in the data tables to pull more than just accounting information. So my spreadsheet software trainer who came to town helped me create this report. And what it does is it looks for specific general ledger codes in the ledgers of our residents. So in this particular instance, I needed the code AAA or MIN. And what happens is we're trying to figure out what we're committed to every period until the end of the year. So you can see kind of in the middle there where it says date range, I can see what I've been committed to from January 1 to December 31, and then from February to December and March to December, because these commitments fall out over the year, and ownership is always looking to see what our liability is for this particular GL code throughout the year. Now that this sheet has been created once, I literally just hit the refresh button, and I'm good to go, and it updates everything that has been added to the ledgers of our residents. Can you guys go to the next screen? My favorite thing about Spreadsheet Server is the drill down capability. So whenever I create reports for everybody, whether they're good or bad reports, everybody always questions the numbers. If I tell you that you're committed to $350 at a particular site, somebody will often come to me and say, no, that doesn't seem right, or where's that $350 coming from? The drill down capability allows me to answer questions quickly, effectively, and with the right information. So this is an example of a drill down that I did on the numbers from the sheet previous. Not only does it bring up exactly what property I'm talking about, what lease, when it started, what the charge code is, what the amount is, being able to answer these kinds of questions really quickly and off the cuff not only gives people more, I guess, confidence in the numbers that I'm putting out, we spend less time between real numbers and making decisions because nobody has to go back and do a bunch of drilling down and figuring out where those numbers come from. It's all right at your fingertips. Next slide, code, whatever. This is another example of something I had to do in the budget season. Our ownerships are not 100%. Some owners own 25% of buildings and 50% of other buildings and 75% of other buildings. So Spreadsheet Server has a thing called a segment list where I was able to build out the properties based on ownership percentages. And because Spreadsheet Server offers all the functionality of Excel, I could do separate tables on the same sheet and combine them together to make an accurate cash reporting of 100% of one property, 25% of another property, and 75% of another property. In times past, either that had to be done manually or the owners were simply given 100% recommendation on everything and they had to figure out themselves what their actual numbers were. This report took about a day for me to put together by the time I figured it all out and how I was going to visualize it. And now it exists, and anytime this particular owner wants an update about where we're at, whether budget or actuals, I hit the refresh button, and within 20 minutes, I can get them the most up-to-date numbers. Okay, next slide. This is another example of something that I had to do during the budget season. They wanted a rolling 3 years of utility consumption. As you know, when you're trying to do budgets, especially for things like gas and power and hydro, you're really kind of guessing. You're sticking your finger in the air, wondering what the temperature is going to be like 1 month. So this year they came to me and said, can you give us the last 36 months so that we can see what we should be averaging? So there might have been a more elegant way to put this together, but I'm a new user of Spreadsheet Server, and this is what I managed to cobble together. So as you can see in the blue band at the top, I have my January 2015, the orange band is January 2016, and the green band is January 2017. And in this little highlighted part below, you can see the custom GL that gets created whenever you're using Spreadsheet Server. And because of built-in Excel functionality, because it's still Excel, I was really quickly able to just add those 3 GLs together for those periods and figure out the 3-year average. This sheet took me a half a day to create rather than a couple days worth of running separate reports out of MRI and trying to get an average. And I had to figure this information out for every single property that we own for a rolling 36 months. Next slide. So this is what the final report looked like. I could have hidden the green stuff and everything at the top, I just didn't. And over to the right, you can see not only did I leave in the totals on the left, so January was $10,822, but the average over the 3 years was $3,600. So that allowed us really quickly to budget for January approximately $4,000. Getting this kind of information hot off the presses during budget season really helps when the owners are sitting across from you and asking you why you've budgeted that way. Do you think that it's the way it should be? How much, thought have you put into that number, or are you just making a guess? It's great for them to have confidence in using historic figures and figuring out what the costs are actually going to be. Next slide. This is another thing that gets run almost on a monthly basis. So we're always budgeting for vacancy loss. Rather than me trying to figure out everything, I just literally run the GLs for vacancy loss and the GLs for revenue and the GL for the budget. And it's a quick variance. I can refresh this at any given time on any given day. It takes about 2 minutes to refresh. And I can send out to everybody exactly where they're sitting compared to budget for vacancy loss. And then we know if we have to reforecast or we know if something's going on at a site. Super helpful. Next slide. And we did the same thing with burden. So it's a little bit tricky to figure out burden on wages because, some people do 100% RSP contribution and some people, don't do RSP contributions at all, and some people max out on benefits and stuff during the year. So we're always running kind of the burden comparison to what we think it's going to be so we can figure out if we've budgeted appropriately and also to help us look forward. So again, it was just the matter of a few GLs, but in the stock MRI cash reports, although I, of course, could edit them to look differently if I needed it to, I was able to run this report leave the cash flows alone so that everybody who's used to looking at cash flow exactly the way it looks is happy with their numbers. But this just allows me to, at the spur of the moment, answer any questions about where we're at with our burden versus what site and why I think there's a difference, or highlight any significant difference and get back to the property manager right away saying, hey, we're way off forecast, what's going on? And being able to provide these numbers, you know, I just bring my laptop into meetings now, and when we sit there and somebody has a question like, well, how much did that roof replacement cost us in 2016? I don't have to log into MRI. I don't have to look up that GL. I don't have to run cash flows and add everything up. I don't have to do a vendor inquiry. I literally just pull the GL number, pull the number out, and I can do a quick drill down. And it allows us to make decisions within that time frame of the meeting, rather than everybody just taking notes and going back to their desk and saying, like, okay, everybody, I'm going to get back to you about what these numbers are, and then we can make a decision from there. So I would estimate just since July, I have probably saved a good 75 hours on just regular reporting. I'm super excited to move into the future and do a lot more of the queries and getting a lot more stock reports ready to go and using Distribution Manager, and I can only imagine how much time it's going to save me in 2018. And I think that's my last slide. Yes, it is.
Well, Jocelyn, thank you very much. Obviously, we appreciate, always love the feedback, always love the customers doing the testimonials for us, the presentations. In my role here is going to be, I'm going to put a little bit of a live activity, if you will, to what Jocelyn has done a great job describing, is how did she actually use that product. We're going to start pulling some live data. We'll build some live reports. I do want to mention questions or comments. Please submit those through the chat feature, the Q&A feature, I should say, within the WebEx itself, and we will certainly do our best to be able to answer that, whether it's a question for me, Connor, or Jocelyn. We will absolutely do our best to be able to answer those for you. I will transition over to the Excel reports. I will pause for just a second. I want to be sure, Connor, if you want to be able to answer for me, are there any questions outstanding at this point before we dive into the presentation, maybe for Jocelyn to answer?
No questions at this point. You're good to go, Kevin.
Perfect. Thank you. So what we have and what we're talking about is Excel-based reporting. Obviously, for purposes of the presentation, Jocelyn's reports were static in nature, screenshots, so you could see how she's actually using the live templates. I'm going to actually go through and show you live data. I'm going to show you how she updated those. I'm going to show you how she built them. We're going to talk about what this spreadsheet server function can do for you inside of your data structure, your data area, and how easily now you can do your monthly, daily, weekly reporting. Now, our product, again, which is called Spreadsheet Server, is just an add-in to Excel. So the only requirement to use this product is Excel and a connection to the data. Now, we're going to focus on MRI information today, but ultimately this can be data from anywhere. We're not restricted to one data source. Ultimately, all of that information is pulled into a template that you create, you build. These are not canned reports. You're not stuck with a layout that you can't modify, because you absolutely can. Now, whether you're an expert in Excel or whether you're just a novice user of Excel, it doesn't matter. You can make the reports function with any Excel features. Most of what we'll talk about is just Excel. Everything else is the live data pool, and we'll show you how easy it is to create that type of information. Now, we're going to start out with just an income statement. We'll dive a little deeper. We're not restricted to any area of data. If you have information in your system or systems that you're connected to that you want to pull information from, you absolutely have the capabilities to do that. Now, this report, all I have to do is open Excel. The ribbon labeled Spreadsheet Server, as you note at the top of the screen, will appear. And as mentioned, to the left of that ribbon is all of the other Excel ribbons that you know and use today. So the great benefit here is that you don't lose one single function as it relates to Excel, but what you now gain is live data. Combine the two, and what we'll show you today is the result. Now, how much Excel you put into that is totally up to the builder of the reports. Everyone can use them differently. One person can be the builder. Everyone else can consume. The other great feature about this is that the security that you have in place today will be read, will be recognized, and ultimately it follows the user of the report. It doesn't follow the report, which is important to understand. So if someone else accesses this data, they will be restricted off of their security level or security access. Now, if you want to be able to do everything I show you here today, you will need this ribbon. That is a requirement. Now, that doesn't mean that these reports become one-dimensional, because they do not. One of the things that we'll discuss toward the end of the call is the distribution feature, which is built into the ribbon. You'll notice it on the right-hand side of that ribbon itself. That will allow you to take this report or these reports and send them absolutely to anyone, live, static, PDF, Word documents, or just leave it in Excel. Again, we'll demonstrate. So this report on your screen, as I open up Excel, the ribbon appears, as I mentioned, the live connection is there. Now, the importance of the live connection is if someone's making journal entries or if someone's posting batches of data that affect your report, you simply just refresh them. You will have instant access to those changes. You don't have to wait 24 hours. You don't even have to wait minutes. We're talking about seconds, and you have that instant data pulled into your template. Now, every report will have a few components in them that relate directly to that ribbon. The first will be a set of parameters. Now, parameters drive the data. All they do is filter your information. In this particular layout, my information is right here on line 13, an entity ID, a year, and a month. Now, as I modify these parameters, you will notice there will be a change of information. Sometimes it will even say value and or pending in the cells, but that just means it's recalculating. Now, I can either key right into the cell, the new parameter in this case, maybe a new location. I happen to have an Excel drop-down list built in here that if I want to toggle back and forth, all I have to do is select that parameter. As I mentioned, you may see value or pending appear there. It's simply just recalculated for the Lynn Marketplace. If you would like to change and even use a wildcard, this asterisk symbol that's highlighted in blue, if used as a standalone, will pull in all information related to that parameter. So in this case, a consolidated all properties report will be created here in just a moment, and I've gone and can toggle back and forth as many times as I would like to. You want to change the year, you want to change the month, it's up to you. Filtered down to exactly what it is that you want to see. Now, once you have filtered, the second and final component in every spreadsheet related to that ribbon is a formula. Now, you may have noted that formula inside of Jocelyn's reports. That formula is right there in the formula bar. Notice it doesn't say 2.3 million in the formula cell there. That formula relates directly to our product. That formula is going directly against the data, and that's how the updates or the refreshes occur. Now, we'll show you how to create that formula. You don't have to memorize it. You don't have to understand it. All you have to do is use it. Now, using it relates to the functions here on the ribbon. Jocelyn also pointed out one of her favorite features. I'm a former user. It's also my favorite. It's the ability to drill further into the detail. So instead of looking at $2.3 million, instead of looking at 3.6 or any balance in this spreadsheet, as long as that formula is there, the drill down is there. So I can go directly into the management advisory fees and start pulling in the information that makes that up. Notice the $2.3 million located here is now broken down into its different components. Inside of these different areas now, you'll notice a little option tab on the left-hand side. Let me pin this out for just a second. You can start filtering on those options, the entity ID, account, and basis, which are listed here. If I want to see all the different entities I've used, remember I wildcarded that. I can click on it. It will format those together. You want to do it by account number. You want to do it by basis. You get the idea. It's just another way to filter the information. The full detail, we'll just take it back to the original screen. Now, if you want to filter inside the panel itself, you can start clicking on these different headers, such as the description. It will sort it alphabetically. Click once or click twice, ascending or descending, just like that on the amounts. You can even take these different headers and just drag them right above where they're sitting. If you want to group it by entity ID here, you also can, as well as by basis. And you'll notice that lower level detail is still available. Change the order, change the filter. Again, it's just a matter of you selecting what you would like to see. Drag these back into the panel, move them around. You want the description on the left-hand side? You absolutely can do that. Each user can have their own layout for the drill down. Now, one of the other features that we provide is the ability to drill further into the information. You may notice that little black arrow here in the panel. That just means that's the line that I'm on. That's the active line. Now, if I hold the control button down, I can select more than one. If I want to move to another line, all I have to do is click on it. but by right-clicking, it will allow me to drill further. Now, as I highlight that drill down option, I want to point out that you may see more than just MRI drill downs. Now, alphabetically, it's located just about in the middle. Now, on either side of that are more options. Those are just different connections. That's going to speak again to the flexibility of the product. Ultimately, we can connect to almost anything. That means you can pull data from anywhere inside the exact same Excel spreadsheet. In this case, if I want to select my MRI information, which as a user, that may be all that you have, that's all that you will see, you will not be bothered with those other connections. But ultimately, by selecting the journals, I can go one step further. With our product, with the capabilities that we have, we are not limited to just this level of information. Residential, commercial, doesn't matter. If you want to go into AP, AR, fixed assets, or whatever modules you're using today, we actually can drill further into that data. We're not limited on the drill downs. The two that you see here are out-of-the-box functions, but with the query capability that Jocelyn had mentioned, we absolutely can go anywhere with this product and or the drill downs. I'll show you other reports that are accessing the different levels of information, but know that drill downs can be taken anywhere, even into invoice images if you happen to have those stored electronically. So let's just sort of recap this for just a second. Again, this is live data in Excel. The formula controls the balances. The parameters will determine what the balances are. And then the ribbon provides you with some additional functions. We've started to cover, one of those was the drill down. We're going to get into some more of these here in just a moment. More importantly, the building of reports, showing you how that formula can be inserted into a spreadsheet, copy and paste, and expand it out as much as you would like. Year-over-year comparisons, location comparisons, that's really going to be the driver of the report. Again, comments or questions through the Q&A box inside of the WebEx panel, absolutely. And Connor, I will pause again just to be sure if there are any questions out there that I can answer before we move into building our...
Yes, sir, we do have a question. Does Spreadsheet Server work in older versions of Excel, such as 2010? And I guess just expanding on that too, what are the minimum tech requirements to use Spreadsheet Server?
Good question. So it's very simple. The minimum requirements are really, do you have a computer and will it turn on? It really can be that simple. But to be more specific, we are a Microsoft partner. All the different supported versions of Excel that exist out there today, we follow the same path as Microsoft. All the way back to 2007, all the way through Office 365. All the users don't even have to be on the same version. The only difference that you will see from a functional perspective would be more about the presentation. The Excel versions are different, the ribbons are different, so your screen may look a little different just because of that, but all the functions will still be there no matter what version you have.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. And if I have any data in any other sources outside of MRI, would Spreadsheet Server work with that?
Absolutely it will. So it's not just specific to one connection. We don't charge per connection. We charge per user. If we have time, we'll get into that. There are different license levels, but ultimately you can have one connection, you can have 100, and you can pull data from multiple sources at the exact same time. This is actually a great data validation tool. If you're moving from one general ledger to another, we can connect to both of them, and you can ensure that the data carries over correctly. If you leave historical data on the old system and start with new on your new product that you may have installed, we can run that data side by side, and you will not lose any of that information. So absolutely, multiple sources in the same spreadsheet.
Thanks, Kevin. That's all we have right now.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So what we'll move to next is the building of reports. Let's talk about how you create that formula and insert it into Excel. I'm going to click on the next tab here that says Sheet 1. Now, we're going to cover a couple of things here. I'm going to start over. I'm going to start from scratch. I'm going to just insert that formula and use my imagination to create this layout. Now, there's a lot of work that happens before that. When I say a lot of work, you already have reports in place that you like. You want to keep them. You don't want to have to rebuild them. We have the ability to insert our formula into those spreadsheets and bring them to life with our function. We also have a lot of pre-built content on the MRI space. This is not the first MRI webinar that we've done. We have a lot of customers in that area, so we know your challenges. So we have a lot of that pre-built content that we'll also share with you. So between the reports that you have and the reports and content that we have, that's where we start. If we've exhausted both of those efforts, we're going to go to this build a template and show you how easy it is to create your own. Now that build a template can be controlled. Not every user has to have access to that option, but it will be the key in creating the formula. Now when I click on it, you'll notice this panel that appears. Now this panel is the interface, as I like to call it, into the data. So this interface controls the formulas, and it controls what you use from a parameter perspective. Now the first formula highlighted in blue says GL value. That stands for general ledger. You want to create a financial statement or an account analysis or some type of balance sheet or cash flow? You absolutely can. This is the formula that you'll use, and that's the same formula that we started with in that operating statement, that first report that we analyzed. Now there are other formulas here that say query. A little different in function, but the same output. You have a formula in a spreadsheet, but the query formula allows you to go against any area of data inside of your system, any module or any connection. A little bit more advanced, from a functional perspective, but the end result is still there. Live data in a spreadsheet, it just is going to allow you to start at a different spot. I'll show you some of those formulas. Now on the GL side, you will notice in this area that I'm outlining, there are parameters outlined here. Now those parameters relate directly to the system that you're connected to. Now this is my MRI database. Your database may be different than mine. You certainly have different entity IDs and account numbers and basis that you use. You might even have more than 3 segments on your general ledger. And that's okay. We create this panel on your screen for you. You don't have to map it. We pre-map the content here. So out of the box, you can build your own financials instantly upon the creation of that ribbon, which, by the way, takes about 90 minutes to get you installed. We target 90 minutes, but it usually happens much quicker than that. We just allot that kind of time, and again, it's done via WebEx. Now, the parameters listed here, again, are related to my information, so ultimately your screen may look a little bit different than mine, but that's okay. It will be your data. Now, the questions that you answer will be in the form of a drop-down. Where would you like to insert that formula? Which worksheet? These are just the tabs in my workbook. Maybe you have more than one database you want to connect to. Now, I only have one here, but maybe you have a test box, you have a development box, a production box, or maybe just different databases holding different information. That's okay. You can toggle back and forth between them right here. Budgets. Maybe you have a budget, forecasts, and plans in your system. We can read those. You don't have to do anything additional for that, so you can do budget versus actual comparisons that easy. The year, self-explanatory. That's the year of data you'd like to see. So select from the list, type in what you need, and automatically pull it. Formatting, periods, quarters, year-to-date, life-to-date, and ranges. And then the period just represents the month. Now the parameters that I'm selecting create the initial formula. Now once I get it into Excel, I can modify them all. Down to the account segments. I have 3 listed here, as I mentioned. To the right of each one, there's a button that says row. If you click on it, it changes it to a column. All that is Excel formatting. Will it go up and down or left to right? Row versus column. The value column, there's the asterisk symbol. It gets inserted automatically into the parameter, but I don't want to use that. I want to remove it. So you can just either start typing in there, or I'll show you how you can look them up if you don't have that information memorized. So by typing a value here, I'm going to be able to pull specifically for that entity ID. Well, there's a box to the right of each one that if I click on it, it will populate with a pre-built list. Now that list is live. This is pulling directly from your system. So as you add new locations or you add new information, we absolutely can filter off the description and or value. You do not have to memorize anything. Account number, my structure starts with an HT. Well, I'm going to type HT51 because I need all accounts that fit that definition, and I'm going to put that wildcard right at the end of it. So that will pull all of that information, and I'm going to show you how it completes out the remaining digits. Now there's a line description area. All this is asking you is what did you create? So you just type in a description. You can always modify it. Now by hitting the insert button in the bottom right-hand side, I'm going to insert that formula. I'm going to insert all the parameters. And now this is Excel. I'm going to copy, I'm going to paste, and I'm going to modify. So as you're going through now, everything that was previously selected will be changed from a quarter to year to date If you would like to drop in just an Excel variance between the two formulas, you absolutely can. Again, leveraging your Excel experience and then copying this down the template to add additional rows, columns, whatever you need them to be. So you can see how the user is controlling the information. Now where it says repairs, you can just start typing in whatever you want them to be. If you want this to be a different location, you absolutely can. So you just type in what you want to see. Maybe you want that to be for a different year, different months. You want to make this a rolling 12-month. You can copy over as many columns as you want and change to as many years as you want. As long as the data is there, you instantly can grab it. You can type in 5 different locations right here in this cell, and it'll pull all 5 of them. Separate them by a comma. It will put them together into one total. There's really no limitation on how you filter. Now I mentioned I pulled that wildcard in and I created repairs. I've got 4 different balances that are calculated, and then there's a variance column that's just Excel. Well, I can drill down into those, take a look at the information, but why not introduce these 2 additional features called expand and collapse? Now by selecting that option, watch what it does to my spreadsheet. It will take all of that additional information, so in this case, filling in all the account numbers that I have requested. It will give me their exact definitions from the chart of accounts. I don't even have to type those in, it fills them in for me. And notice that the formula is still intact in the template. So the variance of $13,000 is really broken down into its individual components, and most of my expenses right here under General Exterior, I can drill down, find out what's going on. If you want to leave the report in that format, you can, but the reverse of that is the collapse feature, which will roll it right back up to the template that you created. This is the report building phase. The difference between this report and any template that I show you is going to be all the Excel functions that the user wants to apply. You want to automate the formulas. You can add +1 to any of these cells. If I change it here, it'll automatically add 1 to that next cell, and therefore they can all be automated from start to finish. Charts and graphs and borders and colors and pivot tables and VLOOKUPs, if you want to use that, you absolutely can still apply it. I will mention again, Q&A, questions, submit those through the Q&A box within inside the WebEx. I'll pause occasionally to get into those questions from Connor. I want to introduce a query now. I want to show you what that means because it's more than just financial data that we can pull. We'll get into some examples here. I've got a couple that we brought here today, and then we'll conclude with the distribution. Now, as I go down here to the next cell, cell A18, I'm going to show you that I can go in the same workbook, go back to the Build a Template for just a second, but I'm going to introduce this new formula or formulas and say query. Now, a query formula allows you to be able to select a query. I'll show you what that means in a moment, and insert that into the spreadsheet, just creating an additional formula to pull data from different areas. Now, there's one that says value and one that says detail. The value formula functions very similar to the GL value, a summarized total that you can drill into. The detail version, just as it explains, it's going to pull all the detail into the spreadsheet, eliminating the drill down altogether. You understand the value formula. You saw me insert that. Let's jump down here to the detailed side and so you can see what that does. By selecting that option, you will notice that the parameters are now non-existent here. That's because every module is different. Every query is different. Unlike the GL, which is very constant when you're building a report, what you're changing on the GL is just a parameter in that segment. Here you have the ability to even change the parameters. So if I want to pull a check number, a vendor name, a tenant name, or a contract number, or tenant information, or any data that you have, absolutely you can. All you have to do is select the query that you want to use. Now notice in this particular formula, there's a query name. There's a box that's empty, but there's a folder that allows me to populate that. So by selecting that folder, you will notice the information that appears. It's a folder structure in your network. These are queries stored within inside of your environment. These are not in the cloud. They're not in global software. Alphabetically, if you go down the list, I have MRI. And again, this just sort of speaks to the other connections that we have. Those are just a sample of those. We can and have connected to over 150 different ERPs/databases. So that means I can pull data from every one of those right now. Now on the MRI space, because again, we are well aware of the MRI challenges, we have a lot of pre-built content, a lot of pre-built queries that we share with our customers. Now this is what a query looks like. So you just find the one that you need, AR aging. You double-click, there are the parameters. Now, with the row versus column again, after 10 years of using this product, this is absolutely habit. I like everything on the column versus the row. There are a couple of additional steps on the detailed side that you need to perform. One, you want the column headings. You want to pull that detail, the descriptions, into the spreadsheet. And the last step is you need to tell Spreadsheet Server where you want to start that data. Well, I've done this before. I know I need about 13. I have about 13 different parameters here that I need to add in the formula. So I need to add 13 to the line 18 that I'm on. So what that means is A31 is where I need to insert the formula. Now I'll show you that you can modify that in just a second. So I want my detail to start at A31. Now by doing that and hitting the Insert button, that's going to start my detail right here on A31. Now if I were to mess that up, you may notice in the formula it even says A31. So I can go in and move and adjust accordingly. But I've got that in the right spot. Let's get the detail in the spreadsheet. Now right now, I have left the remaining parameters wild-carded. Even if I leave them blank, that means they're wild-carded on the query, so I don't have to have the asterisk symbol in there. But because there's a formula here, I can drill down into that information. I don't have to go any further than the formula itself. But instead of drilling down into these panels, let's take this information and drop it right in my template. All I have to do is ask for that detail. The bottom selection says Selected Detailed Report. That's the formula that I'm on. Detailed Report, I just want to do this selected formula. I can do all of them, which means every report in the workbook, but again, I just want to do the singular version. Now by selecting that, you're going to see here in just a second, here is all the information in the template. Now with a little bit of formatting, if I want to go through here and make these dollar values, you only have to do that once. You don't have to do it every time you execute a query. You can format the report to whatever it is that you need it to be, and that will stay. A little column adjustment. You want to add filters to the data. Come up here and do that. I don't have to keep rerunning it. If I want to focus on a specific region or a discount or days outstanding, all I have to do is select the categories that I need, filter accordingly. So this information now, because we have the ability to go anywhere against your data, any report can be created, any Excel features can be applied. So now it's just a couple of report examples just to sort of drive the point home of how far you can take this information. Rent roll summaries. I know those are challenges. Every customer that we deal with asks for rent rolls. So we have some pre-built rent rolls out there. Now they may not be exactly what you want, but at least it gives you a good starting point and gets you up and running much quicker. Now this rent roll forward here for rent roll summary, driving it by a term we call business unit. You can apply any descriptions that you want, but let me show you how interactive this is. If I want to go in here and pull in a different location, you'll notice it updates that description or property name. It pulls in the applicable information, and guess what? There's a formula, so there's a drill down that I can dive a little bit deeper into that $7.7 million number, and in this case, look at the tenants, the square footage, the effective move-in dates, move-out dates, what are the gross rents, the increases across the spreadsheet. So ultimately, we can get anywhere and any report can be created. Now, whether it's the summarized version or back to another example of how we can pull detail. Here's another example of just being able to go out, change parameters, generate the information, and you'll notice my report will update as much as I need it to. I don't have to mess with the formatting. All I have to change are the parameters themselves. Now I'm running just a generate details button here. That's just a macro button. It's not a requirement. So instead of having the formula, which you can see is hidden behind that button, I just simply have to make that as easy as I can for the end user. So whether they're an Excel expert or not, we can make it as simple as we need to. And again, an example of another template that can be sent to a customer who's moving into this space. So let me pause again. Connor, I've done a lot of talking, the Q&A box. If there's questions, comments, or thoughts about anything that I've done here, I've sort of exhausted the efforts on this side before I move to distribution. Questions?
Yeah, Kevin, so MRI has the ability to run reports by vendor. Would you be able to pull activity, monthly totals by vendor, and also adding to that, are you able to customize the parameters that you sort by?
Absolutely. So the reports that we're showing you are just templates that we created. So we can pull data using any type of parameter as long as it's a field of data in the system. When I say field of data, if you're working inside of MRI and you put in a check date, check number, vendor name, we can even filter by amounts and date ranges. You name it, we can filter on it. the more parameters you have, the more specific your data will be. So that will allow you to be very specific and focus on just the information that you want to have into your template or report. Now, as far as vendor data, that same conversation applies. If you want to filter by vendor and you want to filter by specific amounts and what's due, turn them into aging buckets and all kinds of functionality, absolutely you can. Again, that's just another way to build a report, but that's certainly an option for a customer, and we may already have something like that built for them to use.
And what kind of flexibility do you have with the parameters and sorting by them? Like, do you have the ability to do ranges, exclusions, things like that?
Right. So as we go through this today, as we go back to maybe even the operating statement, I can show you some of the parameters that are behind the scenes over here. Now, this is by account number, but the same conversation applies when you're building any type of report. You can do ranges, which you'll see here in this cell. There's a period separating two account numbers. That's just telling me I'm going to pull all accounts that end in 10 all the way through 20. Then a comma is just a separator that allows me to add individual accounts to that. Even notice there are multiple ranges here. We can do exclusions. We can do hierarchies even. Here, notice it doesn't even use an account number. This structure here is a hierarchy, as we call it, maybe even a segment list to be more specific. But a segment list will allow me to define groupings, as noted here on the bottom, so we can standardize your definitions. So if users get confused on what is in interest income, they can just insert a description into the spreadsheet instead of trying to figure out what account numbers apply, therefore automating. When each report's built, you're comparing apples to apples, so there are no deficiencies or discrepancies in how the data is being compared. So a lot of different functionality, exclusions to groupings to, again, really it's a matter of what are you trying to do, and Spreadsheet Server can do it, and that may sort of transition into the training. As part of the partnership with us, we'll send a physical person to your location and train you. We'll even help you build reports. You're not just going to be left on your own to try to figure out what we do and how we do it. We're going to bring live examples. We're going to use your data. You will actually have takeaways by the time we are done with that training. And that training takes about 2 to 5 days, depending on what the user needs. Connor, additional questions?
That's it right now. Appreciate it, Kevin.
Sure. 5 more minutes. If you've got that, I'm going to talk about the distribution, and then ultimately, again, we can focus and circle back on any outstanding comments or questions that you may have. Now, what the distribution will do, it's going to tie together all the data that you want to send. Remember, when we started this conversation, if you want to be able to do everything I demonstrated today, you need to have this ribbon. You need to have a license of the product. That will allow you to execute the formulas and the parameters. Well, not everyone's going to have that, and not everyone needs it. So therefore, we've introduced that distribution on the right-hand side. It comes with the product. It's not an additional fee to have this type of functionality. Now, again, we can control who has access to it, but it's ultimately part of that ribbon. Now, the tab that I'm on was created under the New Control Sheet button. You'll notice the exact same name. It inserts this tab and the headers that you see here. Now, for presentation purposes, I have a couple of distributions here. On line 6, I'm going to show you how to add a couple of more. Now there's a button down called Maintain Specs. When I click on that, you're going to see another panel appear, very similar to the Build a Template. It will walk you through from a drop-down perspective, answer some questions, insert it into the spreadsheet. Now whether it's file saving, which means over here on the right-hand side, I can select where I want to send that file, which also can include SharePoint sites or financial statement repositories that you have built in place today? Absolutely. Maybe you want to email it. We connect into your existing email application. So when you send an email with our product, it will be your email address for using. It will not be something that gets caught in spam or something no one's going to recognize. It will go through your sent items, and if someone responds, it will come back into your inbox. We're simply setting it up in Excel. You want to leave the report in Excel, you can. CSV, HTML, PDF, and even Word document output. These conversions happen whenever you distribute. Modification of cells. Notice in the drop-down list here, that's all the tabs in this workbook. So you can select what you want to modify. I want to select that operating statement, and I'm going to click on that tab because that's going to allow me to modify parameters. If I move this panel out of the way, I'll expose those. And all I'm going to start doing is making a reference into the parameters I want to update. So if I want to send out my Boylston Street address, I can. If you want to modify the date, all you have to do is keep selecting the cells that you want to update. And what happens is when you distribute this report, these parameters will update automatically, the data will refresh, and it will only present what you want the end user to see. They don't have to have a license to modify. All they have to have is Excel or PDF or whatever version you're sending that file in will control what information is being presented. It's a great way to keep standardized reporting. Specify the worksheets. Same drop-down list. All we're doing now is selecting the reports we want to send. The user doesn't need to see every tab here, so all I'm going to do is start selecting all the reports to go into that email. This will be one attachment. That attachment will have 2 tabs. There is a protection line here. By checking the boxes, that will allow me to add password security for this to be opened and or modified. I'll show you that in just a moment. Down on the bottom left, converting formulas to values, global only. Now that formula that we inserted via the build-it template is called a global formula. That allows you to be able to take that formula out of the spreadsheet and drill down, and have static data, if you will. If you leave the formula, you need to have a ribbon. Well, again, not every user is going to do that. So by being able to convert that formula global only, we're going to turn this back into just Excel or a PDF if you would have selected that. That will do this by default. Now, if you want to leave the formula, there is a no conversion option. That means the individual who opens it up has to have the ribbon, and they will be able to function accordingly. Recalculate, remember we're live. You want to make sure all the postings and journal entries are being pulled into this template since you've last updated it. So just by selecting the recalculate button, that will handle all of that. Email, here's that tab related to setting up an email. Because we're connecting into your current email application, you can filter through. We read email addresses. So just like you create an email today, type in the subject line, type right down here in the panel. Here's where we cover those passwords. When I check that protect box, that allowed me to be able to provide a password to open it or modify it, just an added level of security. And the last step is the add button. If I want to scroll out here and grab any information, wherever you have access, you want to send a tenant agreement or pictures, whatever it needs to be, additional files can also be attached. Now by hitting the push button, what this will do is insert this right into the spreadsheet. And I selected the wrong line, but that's okay. What we can do is just delete and move this up. I'm just going to build this out. I can modify it right here in the template if I need to, or I can modify it right here in Excel. If you copy and paste, I can add more lines. If I need to send a report to Connor and Tim, and if I want to start changing what the definitions are, Connor just needs a PDF, and Tim, he's not a spreadsheet server user, but he likes Excel, and we're all in charge of different locations. So you start typing in there what you need, and therefore each individual will receive their particular report with their information, no license required. Now you want to remove reports as well or add additional ones? You can. So Tim only needs the operating statement here. So now I'm building a distribution list. To be able to send these reports, you go to distribute. There's a distribute all function. If I go down to the selected option, that will allow you to send only the lines that you highlight. As an example, only line 8 would go in this option. But we even have a scheduling capability. We can schedule reports to be sent down to any amount of time, minutes, weeks, days, months, years. If you want to send one every single minute of every single day or at 2 o'clock in the morning, we absolutely can. The scheduling component is also part of the distribution manager. So from start to finish, what we've discussed here is the ability to pull live data into Excel, the ability to create your own reports, and ultimately the ability to distribute those to anyone who needs to see them. Spreadsheet server, start in Excel, stay in Excel. At this point, questions or comments? Again, we'll answer those. Connor, any additional thoughts or comments as far as questions maybe that have been submitted?
Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate it. So we do have a few questions. First one being, can you integrate with a CRM such as Salesforce?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, we use Salesforce here within Global Software. I use it every single day on that platform.
Great. Second question, how quickly costly is a custom integration of Spreadsheet Server? And I'll touch on this one a little bit, because the first thing I want to say is that every integration with our clients is a custom integration. As Kevin mentioned earlier, we spend 2 to 5 days on site training you based on the level of deployment that is needed at your specific organization. And during that time, not only is there going to be a knowledge transfer of Spreadsheet Server, so you know what button does what and how to use the product, but we're also going to spend a lot of time in report building workshops and working side by side with you to build out content or convert any existing content that you have with Spreadsheet Server. So the goal is for you to be self-sufficient with the tool by the time we leave, but also have a good library of content to work with. And as far as how quickly that can be done, we usually send somebody on site within about a month of an agreement being in place. So with Spreadsheet Server, once you decide you want to move forward with the software, you can be up and running and have your reports built within a month. And the time spent that you have to on the front end is very, very minimal. The installation itself takes about an hour. It's done via WebEx. We do that before training, and then we come on site to train, and really that's it. That's all that has to be done to integrate Spreadsheet Server. And I did want to push that back to Jocelyn a little bit, and wanted to know if you could speak a little bit more about your experience during training with your trainer.
Sure. So my trainer was Matt Cook, and he came to the office for 5 days, and he was amazing, absolutely phenomenal, knew the software inside and out, was excellent at Excel on top of just knowing the software. So if there were things that I needed formula-wise or VBA macros or anything like that, he helped me with all of that. By the time he left at the end of day 5, I not only could do all the standard GL stuff all by myself, but he had built for me 3 custom queries that I needed within the next month, and had set me on the path to kind of figure out my own after that. I cannot say enough good things about Matt and how great it was. And as for hookups to our system, with my in-house IT department, who, you know, they're great, but they're by no means experts at this kind of thing, it still only took half a day, and we were up and running. There was no issues with anything, and not that I don't want to call global support software for questions, but so far I really haven't had to. It's worked perfectly for everything that I need.
Great. Thanks, Jocelyn. And you actually just touched on another question we had, and that was asking about support after training. And I know we've touched on it a little bit, but just to reiterate, Global Software does offer 24/7, 365 support to all of our clients. So yeah, not 364, every day of the year. We're not going to skimp you on one. And if at any point in time, that's again, email, phone, live chat, there's always somebody here to help you if you have any questions with the software. All right, and our last question was around cost of the software. And the cost of the software widely varies. It's a perpetually licensed software, so once you purchase it, you own it. It is a per named user license, and there are different license types. So there's a lot of moving variables there. If there's an interest in moving forward with Spreadsheet Server, I'm happy to take that conversation offline, and we can get to a very accurate quote for you on what an implementation of Spreadsheet Server would cost. My information's on the screen to help answer any additional questions, but we'll do a quick last call here for any questions, and then we'll wrap up.
Somebody asked, we're in the process of upgrading to a new version of MRI. Will there be additional costs when we upgrade?
Okay, yeah, I did not see that question, but to answer that, there are no additional costs when you upgrade to different versions of MRI. So if you're wanting to connect to any other systems, we don't charge per connection. Once you have your connections established or your users established, there's no additional cost there. Was that any? I didn't see that one. So were there any extras that I may have missed?
Let me look. Nope, that looks like it.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, and thanks to Jocelyn for joining us, and thanks to everyone else who viewed the webinar. Again, my information's on the screen. If you have any additional questions, I'm happy to help, and everyone have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Connor. Thanks, guys.